Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President of Symantec Endpoint Management and Compliance, Vishal Gupta.
You guys are very kind. Thank you. Thank you so much. A big good morning to everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the official launch of the Webcast, as well as the launch for the Endpoint Management family, which comprises of IT Management Suite 8.1, Service Desk 8.1, and Go Solution Suite 3.2. We're very happy to be broadcasting live from Chicago. We want to thank the Chicago user group for hosting us. Anybody remember last year where we broadcasted from? New York. That's right. So, and we have a bunch of people from New York. So we have a room full of 100+ customers, partners, employees. A big round of applause for all of you for making here. And that's not all. In addition to our Chicago user group, we have 4 other user groups who are watching this live. And that's New York. We have Cleveland, Denver, and Houston. And so, you know, we're really happy that all of those guys have gotten together. They're watching the webcast live. And that's not even all. We have over 800 people, in addition to these user groups, who have registered to attend this webcast. So we're really thrilled at the massive reception we're seeing, not just from Chicago, but from all the other cities, as well as from the 800+ people from the other user groups. So again, very, very happy for that. Thanks for your loyalty. There are 2 people that I wanted to introduce without whom this event would not have been possible. We have seated in the room our Executive Vice President, Balaji Yelamanchali. Balaji, if you want to maybe stand up. We want to thank him. You know, Balaji not only made the trip, he also provided us the funding to do this event. As you know, it's been a couple of years since we've gathered all the customers together. So really want to thank him. Without his support, this wouldn't be possible. And also Shri. If we have Shri, he's the head of our product marketing. He again gave us a lot of support. So really want to thank these 2 for making this happen. So what's the agenda today? So today we'll do 2 big things. One is we want to make sure all of you are very excited about 8.1 and all the other endpoint management things. So we'll talk about it. We have senior members of our product management here, people like Damon that none of you know about. And so we'll talk about it, right? But more importantly, we know you want to hear from people like you who has done it before. So we have 3 customers. We have Coach, we have Wendys, we have Travelport, who have traveled to be here, who have actually done the upgrade to 8.1. So they'll be able to share with you their journey. What was the experience like? What were the best practices? What were the lessons learned? And so that way you can really get ready, not just based upon what the product can do, but what does that journey look like, depending upon which release you're on. So I think that you'll find that experience hopefully very useful and compelling. Now, maybe we can take a minute and look back and think, what is our overall strategy when it comes to endpoint management? What is it we're trying to do? We're trying to do 3 things. 1, we're trying to make sure that ultimately we give you unparalleled visibility. So you have deep visibility into your environment. And that is the reason we know a lot of you. Anybody here moving to Windows 10 Office 365? So a lot of you, right? And so we've introduced things like peer-to-peer, which actually work even beyond Windows 10 as well, for Windows 7 other things, to really make sure we continue to give you amazing visibility into your environment, ability to patch it, ability to get inventory information, all of those things. Secondly, it's all about security. We're Symantec, a cybersecurity company. So what we've done really in this release is built deeper integration with other Symantec security offerings. Anybody here has SEP? Probably a lot of you. We know 70% of the base has SEP. And so we've built that integration with SEP to give you that information into the agent health, because we know that is something that's very important for you, which SEP agent is running, which is not, and get that visibility. Similarly, we built integration with CCS, Control and Compliance Suite. So that way, you're making sure that not only do you have great visibility, but you're staying secure. You can assess your workloads, do all the things. Anybody here heard of WannaCry? Yeah? So big news last week. Now, amazingly, in our base, because of the patching we provide and all the different versions of Microsoft we patch for and support, our customers want to laugh, right? So we were able to take something that was a big problem and make sure that none of you got affected. In fact, I had one of the customers tell me that they used that with the security group as the reason to roll patching out literally overnight. They rolled it out in the weekend. If somebody is there from, I won't name you which customer it is, and it was across couple continents. That there were 10,000 endpoints in London, 10,000 in the US, and they all just started working. And in the past, they thought it would be a 6-month project. So I think this is a great opportunity for you to really get on the proactive side of security. And then finally, it's all about productivity. And so we're trying to make sure with the same platform you can do more. Manage Macs as well, manage your servers as well. We're adding much more capability along things like CentOS and other Linux variants. So hopefully you will see that visibility, security, and productivity really resonate as we talk about the different things. So finally, to talk about this more, we'll invite Damon, who is our head of product management, to take us next into this.
Thank you, Vishal. Thank you. Thank you, Vishal. And as he mentioned, I'll do the same thing. Big welcome to everybody in the room. For those of you who are not in the room, there's quite a large room of customers here. We're happy to see all of you in person. We're also happy that all of you have been able to join us on the webcast. One of the parts of my job that I think is the most unique and special for me, and the reason why I like to do what I do, is to get to work with customers such as yourselves to make sure that we are developing products that you care about, and you're able to use those products in the way that you care about them, right? So one of the things that's near and dear to our heart, and Vishal talked about this a little bit, is our early adopter program. We know more that customers than just those that were part of our early adopter program have installed version 8.1, but the good news is we're going to get to hear from 3 of our early adopter customers here in just a minute, and they're really the stars of the show. Beyond the features we've added and the solutions, we want to take a lot, and I want to make sure we've got a lot of time for those folks to talk to us as well. But before we get that, we just want to go through here and highlight a couple things. Vishal already talked about some of the main components of this release being around the visibility, security, and productivity of the release directly. So those are the 3 things we've tried to focus on, and it's important for us to help you understand that, because not only does it relate to the features we're providing today, but also as we look at providing new features and function into the future, things like our security integration, right? You could expect more of those types of integrations from us, and us looking at more and more of those types of integrations and bringing those importantly into your environment and having you guys be able to use those within your environment. If we look at the release itself, I actually want to spend just a few minutes here before we get some other folks up on stage to talk about some of the new features that have come out. Some of these you have or might have heard us make some noise about in the last little bit, right? If we look at Windows 10, 365 as an example, I think everybody is probably either migrating to Windows 10, using 365, some component of one or both of those. And there's a number of new things that have been thrown your way where it's important for us to continue to be vigilant on our patching. Vishal mentioned WannaCry, right? That's just the most recent example. But we've also added some functionality into the product that is cumulative in version 8.1 that will make sure we can continue to patch and secure those systems as we move forward. 365 is also a very strong component of that. In addition to that, one of the challenges that you face with some of the things that have happened around Windows 10, 365, et cetera, are the size of the payloads of those patches, right? How are you going to deal with low bandwidth areas, right? Areas where you may not have full servers sitting out there that are just serving up packages out there, things of that nature. And so we've introduced some functionality around our bandwidth management will help out with that. We've also introduced some new features for our Mac functionality, right? So we have traditionally had a very good Mac environment, Mac management, but there's some things we wanted to do to make this even stronger. And so we'll talk about some of the things we're doing to help bring Macs more and more under control. We see more and more than ever an explosion of Macs, especially in BYOD style interfaces, whether you want them to be or in some cases you don't want them to be. They're coming into your environment. So how do you start to get those things under control while still also providing the end user the ability to use the Mac in the way that they intended? One of the worst things you can do to a Mac user is lock a Mac down so far that it becomes not a Mac anymore, right? So how can we deal with that? We'll also talk a little bit about security integrations. Vishal mentioned a little bit about that and where we feel like that there's some special and unique security integrations that we can provide to our customers. And then finally, what are we doing about hosting the infrastructure in the cloud? As payloads move and change, you may want some or all of your infrastructure to move into the cloud. We recognize that, right? We're working with you on that. We've got a very advanced product with a lot of configuration options, but customers more and more increasingly want to provide those payloads and put those into the cloud directly so you can work with them there as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So first, let's talk about Windows 10, right? It's on the tip of my mind, and I'm sure on the tip of your guys' mind quite a bit as well on the Windows 10 side of things. So there's a couple of things that have happened with Windows 10. Some of these, again, you're probably, you may be already aware of. You may be dealing with some of these things today. But number one would be cumulative patching updates, right? That's happened across Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and then also Windows 10 for any of the patches that are coming out. They're cumulative in nature, right? So now they're being joined together, which is great, but these patches get bigger and bigger each month. There's a couple things we want to talk about there. One of them you'll hear about in just a minute with our peer-to-peer bandwidth management functionality. But the other thing is Microsoft has recently introduced the ability to do Delta updates from a monthly perspective. So if you've got a machine that's been patched to March as an example, and you just want to put the April patches out there, you can split those apart, and we can take advantage of splitting those apart as well. So that helps out. The other thing that's a pretty major shift is the feature updates for Windows 10, which is essentially, for those who are not familiar, I think most of you guys probably are, it's essentially akin to a brand new operating system image being put down onto that machine. And so this Feature OS update, it allows it to, within the patch console, we bring that functionality in. We can target the machines that are applicable for those updates and roll those out in a nice fashion using the existing infrastructure in your environment. So you have to go through and set up other servers, other shares, or do it in some other fashion, or send it back to a depot, what have you. It can actually do that from a Windows 10 machine in place, right? Again, the challenge being the size of the update, right? If I had a little more time, I would ask the question. Some of you guys might know, but does anybody know what I'll ask it rhetorically, the size of the latest Windows 10 update? It's around 3.6 to 4 gigs in size is how big that is. Now imagine getting that out to hundreds and thousands of computers. That's a huge challenge, right? And so we want to make sure we've got bandwidth solutions in place to allow for that to take place. Before we go off to talking about peer-to-peer and how we would do that, let's talk for just a minute about 365. So 365, most customers that I talk to, there's really two ways you can install, but most customers we speak with are using the click-to-run functionality. So click-to-run is a great tool. It allows you to put a smaller package out there on the endpoint, and then as the user clicks around inside the application, hence the name click-to-run, it will download or stream through the AppV functionality the new technology, the new features that it needs to from the server directly. Now, the challenge with that is if you were to set that up in your environment today, it's going to have to point back to a DFS setup in your environment, or it points off to the internet, all of which are additional setup. There may be bandwidth challenges, other things you need to manage outside of your infrastructure, outside of your environment, things outside of your control, right? So we've implemented the ability to have 365 updates inside the 8.1 console. So essentially what you do is you turn this feature on. This communicates with the management agent, and the click-to-run functionality changes the transform file on the endpoint, and then as the user clicks around, again using the click-to-run functionality, it will communicate back with our infrastructure to grab any bits that it needs to run the application from our environment directly. Only the differential bits. So it doesn't to download every part of the package. It's maintained on the existing infrastructure. It downloads just the differential bits that are out there, so it gets those and streams those out to the endpoint, right? So very seamless to you without having to, again, put a DFS set up in your environment or point those guys back to the internet if you've got machines that are bandwidth challenged, things of that nature. The other part of this does work with our cloud-enabled management or CEM gateway, right? So if you've got machines that are going outside of your network, and let's say you've got someone that goes to home, or they are sitting at Starbucks, whatever it might be, this will continue to work, and depending on where they're at will depend on where the payload comes from. So it's pretty seamless to the user from that perspective. Now let's talk for a minute about our peer-to-peer download optimization. It's a brand new feature introduced in version 8.1. What this allows you to do is essentially, in the past and traditionally, you have a dedicated server. We call it a site server, others call it something different, to get your packages closest, the payload, closest to the endpoints as you need to. And obviously that presents some challenges, right? I've got a very small network environment drawn up here, very small, but imagine if this was 1,000 or 100 machines, right? How are you going to deal with that? And so what this allows you to do is, first off, what will happen is the peers, when turned on, will discover each other, right? So they basically go out, do a broadcast packet, discover each other, and set up a peer list and say, hey, you know what? I know in this particular example, I've got 3 peers that are out there and that are available for me to work with, right? So if at some point in the future a software policy arrives, let's say for Endpoint 1, this particular case, a software policy arrives, then what it's going to do is it'll check with its peer group, right, to say, hey, does somebody actually have this package already, or is somebody already downloading it, right? If they're not, which in this case they're not, the peers respond back, and then everybody immediately knows who's got what in the environment, and they can know what to do with it. And so what's going to happen is the peers know what to do. And so in this particular instance, endpoint number 1 knows that he has to download that package from the server. So what this allows you to do is, if you think about things like feature pack updates and patches and other big payloads you might want to get out there, this allows you to pre-stage those updates. I've had a lot of customers who have said, hey, you know what, we don't want to do Windows 10 rollouts, but it's very cumbersome for us to know how much time it's going to take, because you've got to do the download, you've got to do the installation, the migration piece, and you don't know how long the download is going to take. It's extremely variable, right? So if you can pre-stage, this gives you the ability to control that a little better and also work better with your bandwidth as well. If a software policy or a patch policy or something arrives later, same kind of thing applies, right? So it'll go out there, and in this particular case, since Endpoint 1 already got that particular piece of software, instead of going back across the WAN to do that, it can go ahead and get that from Endpoint 1, right? And you could extrapolate this to the size of your environment and what you're working with. This can really get aggressive with helping you with some of the bandwidth challenged issues, or some of the smaller sites you've got out there. I work with a lot of, finance, retail, healthcare, et cetera. They have, you've got small clinics and small retail establishments, things of that nature, and so that we believe this will become a very important part of your overall bandwidth strategy. It doesn't replace site servers, doesn't replace the need or the ability to have site servers or package servers in your environment, but it gives you one more thing in your tool belt that you can use to go ahead and manage the bandwidth in your environment. Let's speak for just a minute about Mac profile management as well. Again, if we look at the heterogeneous abilities, right, at bringing Macs into the environment, I think Mac is one of those areas that is, in many cases, largely untapped, especially from a Windows administrative perspective, is bringing those under management. And so we've introduced functionality in version 8.1, which allows you to use the Mac Profile Manager setup to go in that tool and do things like join it to the Active Directory domain, limit the rights of that machine, set up other specific variables for that machine that Apple gives you the ability to do inside of their tool. And then you can bring that into our tool, into ITMS, and then target that via our profile settings to get those out to your computer. So again, this really gives you the ability to start not only doing inventory and software management patch. You've been able to do that for a long time, but this gives you the ability to install profiles on the machine without having to do a full re-image of the machine and otherwise, encumber the user for being able to use the Mac environment that they want to, right? So one more tool in your tool belt, and this is also integrated into the system once you've got that profile management set up. So that's something new in version 8.1 as well that you'll definitely want to take a look at. The other things I wanted to mention here are security integrations. Vishal talked about this a little bit, so I'll go into a little bit more detail here. Is number one, we have an integration back with our Symantec Endpoint Protection, or SEP for short, product, right? And this allows you to, we had a lot of requests from customers say, hey, you know what, I've got a SEP deployment out there. It goes across multiple SEP managers, multiple hierarchies, multiple environments. So give me the ability out of the box to find out what the health of that environment looks like, right? Are they on the right version? Are those SEP agents actually running and healthy? Again, I'll go back to it, the WannaCry. It's because it's the most recent example out there. There were two ways to mitigate that, right? One is patching. The other was using SEP to make sure that attack could not compromise that system, right? So if you had visibility into not only the patching side of that, but also on the endpoint protection side of that, were those systems up and running? Were they actually running the right version, et cetera? This all of a sudden gives you the ability to be on the front foot as opposed to on the back foot for some of these attacks as they come out, right? So this is a very important part of the story and the security integration overall. The other one we're introducing is around our control compliance suite. So for those who are here with us in the audience, you'll hear a lot more about Control Compliance Suite further in the day. If you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to take a look at it. One of the things that Control Compliance Suite gives us the ability to do is to scan a machine and specifically look towards a certain policy or setup. So for example, PCI compliance, HIPAA, other compliance types that are out there, and scan the machine and find out, hey, are all the settings in that machine where they need to be in order to be HIPAA compliant, in order to be PCI compliant. If anybody's ever taken credit cards, you've got PCI compliant machines, Those are sacred cows in the organization. If those things go down, if they're not set up correctly, there is a problem. Your business cannot transact. And so making sure that we can scan those and set the criteria up. And then what we've done is we've integrated this further back with the endpoint management products so that if you do a scan out there and you find that there's a patch missing, you can actually come back and working with your service desk product, either ServiceNow, our service desk, or we can use some other options there as well. We do have the ability to create a ticket and go through your change advisory board, what have you, and then go through that process and then remediate that particular problem out there within the environment. So do a closed loop remediation of that using Control Compliance Suite and using Endpoint Management together. And so that's a unique functionality that we built, again, to give more visibility into security, and especially as you're looking at having compliance or needing to track specific items in that, this gives you the ability to bring that and again do that control and closed loop remediation as well. The other one I want to mention, the last one is, before we talk about Ghost for just a few minutes here as well, is hosting our infrastructure in the cloud, right? So some of you may be aware, if you're not, well, we do have an AMI template up in the Amazon Web Services Cloud today. And essentially what this is showing you is there's really two ways that you can manage your environment from the AMI template if you were to put it up in AWS today. You can use what's called the VPC gateway, right, which that basically creates a virtual private network back to your environment. Now the unique part about this is this gives you full functionality, inventory, patch, etc. But think about this in terms of imaging. So I've been asked a lot by customers, how do I image from the cloud? How do I do that, right? This gives you the ability to set that payload up in the cloud and begin to start imaging from the AWS cloud into your environment because it has a complete connection out there into your environment. That's number one way you can do that. The other way you can do it is through the CEM or Cloud Enabled Management Gateway. Again, if you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to. You'll probably hear from some of the early adopters what they've done on the cloud enabled management side of things. It's a very commonly used feature. But what this allows you to do is have the ITMS payload sitting in the Amazon cloud, and then from there, you can connect through the cloud enabled management functionality directly out to those systems to do inventory, patch, things of that nature. So we really don't care at that point if the machine is, in fact, if you've got CEM turned on at all, we don't care if the machine is sitting inside your corporate network, it's going home, it's coming back, it doesn't matter. It's completely seamless to the end user, it's completely seamless to the agent, and it just makes sure that it does that connection over and over again. So this is really one of those features. I know we've talked about CEM a little bit in the past, but it's worth mentioning again because if you look at, and again, I'll use the example just one more time, I'll try to make it the last one, is the WannaCry, right? Is one of the biggest blind spots people have is how do you effectively patch and manage machines as they go in and out of your environment, and you cannot guarantee the end users are sitting on the VPN. I have to imagine that pretty much everybody has that particular problem and challenge. And so once you turn CEM and enable that functionality, turn that on, this allows you to patch, get inventory, deploy software, and do all the things that you would as if the machine were sitting inside your network, outside your network. And so this is a very important part of the overall compliance story as well. So these are some of the main options. There are, by the way, from an ITMS perspective, you'll hear more about this in the coming days. There's also a full README and things of that nature, guys. So there's an exhaustive list of all the features that are out there. But before we go too much further, what I'd like to do is invite David Evans up to the stage. And David is a product manager, and he works on my team for the Ghost Solution Suite. So David,
okay,
take it away.
Thanks, Damon. Okay, so I'm very excited to be here to bring you an update on what we've been doing with Ghost Solution Suite and also Symantec Service Desk. We're going to kick off with Ghost Solution Suite, but before I tell you more about what we've included in our 3.2 release, I just wanted to do a recap on the journey that we've been on over the last few releases. So back in 3.0, we actually merged a couple of technologies in our deployment portfolio, namely Ghost Solution Suite 2.5 and Deployment Solution 6.9. Since then, we've been doing a few things. We've been updating our technology stack to make sure it's where we need it to be. We've been adding much needed operating system and platform support. And we've also been making sure that the key features that were included in those two previous products are well represented in our platform moving forward. If there's anybody out there that's still running 2.5 or DS6.9, we're still running our license migration promotion, where even if you don't have active licenses, you can take advantage of the functionality in 3.0, We're not going to be running that for too much longer, so make sure you get in contact with either somebody in sales, your partner contact, or any of us here at Symantec, and we'll be more than happy to help you with that. So let's take a look at the 3.2 release. As I mentioned, we have been focusing a great deal on operating system and platform support, and you can see we've added a host of those here. There's a couple of them I just wanted to just pick on and tell you a little bit more about. The first one is the XFS support that we provide. It's not always the first thing that our customers think about when they're using Go Solution Suite, but we have fantastic support for Linux platform within both GSS and also our deployment product as well. So if you haven't already done that, please take a look at that and see how we can extend all of that great functionality into your Linux server estate. I also wanted to pick on Mac here as well, just to touch also on something that Damon mentioned. Go Solution Suite has management capability for Mac, and we have even more comprehensive support for Mac management in deployment solution. So there's actually a session that I'm running tomorrow as part of this summit that's going to be dedicated towards telling you the benefits of Mac management with Symantec and how you can make the best use of that. So I'd encourage you to try and attend that. We've actually been working on some updates to both of these areas, which we're hoping to bring you in upcoming releases. The next thing that we went after is actually the installation experience. With Go Solution Suite 3.1, we actually changed our installer technology. And to be honest, we actually introduced some limitations that we weren't happy with. So with 3.2, we've managed to reinvent that installation technology and bring back everything that we were limited by before. And I do want to pick out one specific one. You can now, again, install and manage your Pixie infrastructure. And that's something that over the last 12 months, our customers have been really asking us for. So we have some customers that are running hundreds, and I mean this, hundreds of Go Solution Suite servers in their environment. And you may not be aware of this, but we do have a silent install option on both the main installer and also the regular updates that we provide. So if you want to automate the deployment of those upgrades and those installations, we have everything you need to be able to do that. The next thing that we provided was some extra language support. We're very keen to try and keep our language support exactly where it needs to be, and so we've closed some major gaps there. And then, as you would expect from Symantec, we've done a lot of work to focus on the security and the quality of our products. And you can see that we've actually added 6 maintenance packs on top of our 3.1 release. And just while I touch on the maintenance packs there, we're actually making a change with 3.2. We're moving away from maintenance packs and into what we call release updates. The reason that we're doing that is that we want to bring you value in the product as soon as we can and as soon as it's ready. So as well as the quality and security updates that you see on a regular basis, we're also going to drop some features in there as well for you to take advantage of. So when you see these release updates, please read the release notes very carefully because you might see some new functionality dropping in there. Just wanted to give you a heads up about that. So a couple of other things that I wanted to share, just some initiatives that we've been running to make sure you're getting the very most out of your purchase. The first one is that I've relaunched the sponsored group on Symantec Connect for deployment and imaging. So I've been in there, I've updated things like operating system support, release information, I do news announcements on there as well. Importantly, I do also talk about some of the new features that we're considering adding to the product. So if you jump in there, you can see say details of some of the things that we're considering. It's not everything because sometimes we like to keep our cards close to our chest, but you can give us feedback on the things that we're considering. There's also a link in there as well to give us feedback on new enhancement requests that you might like to see. So it's great to be part of that. I think we have some 400 or 500 members already, but anybody who isn't a member of that group, please jump in there and join us. We do read every post that is posted on Connect, and between us and the rest of the community out there, we can usually help you with everything that you have. The next update I wanted to provide is we do have a partner solutions page on Connect as well. So this is a one-stop shop for viewing all of the extra solutions that our partners have built on top of both Deployment Solution and Go Solution Suite. I do have a dedicated webcast for the GSS launch, which is happening on June 13th. You can hear more from me about the details of the Ghost 3.2 release and the other things that we're working on. And you can also hear from these partners directly about the solutions that they've built on top. And the next thing I wanted to talk through is something we're very excited about. And if any of you haven't started with your Windows 10 migration yet, this is going to be absolutely critical for you. Windows 10 is a little different from all operating systems that we've had before. So we've created a white paper that's going to tell you literally everything you need to know to kick off that Windows 10 migration in your environment. We have a bunch of topics that we cover here. As you can see, it's very comprehensive. But almost as importantly, we also provide some collateral as well. So we provide all the sample jobs, we provide scripts for your driver management, and we provide reporting as well. So this is literally everything that you need to migrate to Windows 10 within your environment. We have a link just on the slide here that you can hit. This is like a microsite that we're hosting on Symantec Connect. You can come here, join us in our conversation, let us know how you're going with the Windows 10 migration, any tweaks that you think that we can make to any of our material, please just come let us know. And again, the whole community is going to be present there. The actual white paper itself is going to be available through the BrightTalk format that we're using right now, so you should see that available at the end of this session. So that's everything I had to share on the Go Solution Suite side. So I'm just going to hit Symantec Service Desk very quickly. We've got 4 updates that we're providing as part of the 8.1 release. The first one, we've been waiting for this for a while, I think maybe up to 10 years, but we've actually given the UI a big refresh within the product. So it's flatter, it's sleeker, it's far more modern, and we're already getting some great feedback from customers who are enjoying that new user experience. The next thing that we've done is added some language support. So these are the 2 missing pieces of the jigsaw to make sure that our Service Desk language support is parallel to everything we have in ITMS. So if it's supported, a language is supported in ITMS, it's also now available in Service Desk. And just a couple more things. The next one is that we have a managed software delivery process in our service catalog now. So you can publish this. Your users can come in, request software. This will take it through the entire approval process that you can customize and deliver the software to your end user. This has been a key request from customers over recent years, and we've managed to add that in this release. And we're hoping that this is going to be the first of many to add real value to that service catalog within Service Desk. And the last one I wanted to mention is that we now have a tiered approval approach in our change management module. You can have that as part of a template, or you can use it on the fly, but it's specifically there to handle the tiered, chained, very complicated change approval processes which are available and required in almost every customer that we speak to. So that's the updates that we've got for Service Desk 8.1. These were obviously pretty quick that we've been through. Look out for that dedicated GSS session, the webcast on June 13th, where you can hear more. And so you've heard from me about Service Desk, you've heard about GSS as well, you've heard from Damon about all of the great functionality that we've introduced to ITMS. I think now is a good time to hear from some customers that are already using these solutions in production as part of our early adopter program. So without further ado, I'd like to bring Damon Covey back to the stage.
Fantastic. Thanks, David. Appreciate that. So you've heard from us, and I was going to say that these guys are clearly the stars. I was going to say we're the eye candy, but I'm actually not sure we can actually say we're eye candy. But these are the stars, make no doubt about it, right? So really quickly, guys, and then I'm going to have them kind of jump into it. As we've got Michael Cruz from Coach, Chris Marshall from Wendys, and then David Hines from Travelport joining us up on stage. So they did go through the early adopter process with us on version 8.1. And we do have our support teams and partners and ourselves on site with them, helping them through that, just to give you a little bit of background there. But I'll start with you, Michael, since you're closest to me here. And maybe what I'll have you do is just, kind of give the folks, a quick introduction of yourself, a little bit about your environment, what solutions you're using, and then maybe anything that's interesting from your perspective on the 8.1.
Thank you. Well, Michael Cruz, I manage global endpoints everywhere for Coach Inc. So whether it's in Asia, Europe, North America, Max, we're starting to get into now with 8.1. We utilize Casper as a management system and found out that inventory it sucks a little bit with the Casper environment. So in Altiris, we are utilizing inventory to collect that from our Max and to gather that where we can have one CMDB. With the on-site engagement, it was great. Tomas and team came in, helped out with the upgrade. The upgrade was seamless. We did an in-place upgrade. One of the caveats I would say is know your maintenance windows. Know when you can execute something in your environment. Make sure your patches are up to date or so, because some things are going to kick off, and if it's not scheduled, you just have to piecemeal it together. We utilize patch, CEM, asset management, just the broader tools to manage the endpoints.
And what version did you upgrade from?
We upgraded from 8.0 to 8.1. I definitely recommend just staying on top of the releases going forward. it is a seamless integration. You wouldn't want to jump from a 7 to an 8.1. That's when you have a lot of those concerns, right? So my rule of thumb is we just stay on top of the product. We keep jumping each version at a time.
Okay. And so you felt like it was a pretty seamless transition then going from version 8.0 to 8.1?
Yeah, very seamless. You know, I do recommend the cloud. We utilize that today. Definitely with different acquisitions and stuff that we go into. I'll bring up Stuart Weissman, for instance. We acquired this company, and how are you going to be compliant? How are you going to gather inventory? How are you going to do this? And it's easy to say, hey, to the IT management team to install this agent. From there, I can gather all the inventory, I can patch the machines, I can run reports and see what's out there, see if we're vulnerable or not.
And you're referring to cloud-enabled management,
Yes,
correct?
CEM, thank you.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. Can you talk just a little bit about maybe Windows 10 and how that's working in your environment? And then also maybe if there's anything around peer-to-peer or any of the other functions you're looking for. I know it's pretty new, right? But
Yeah.
you know, what are some of the things you're looking forward to being able to do with any of those functions if you can?
So Windows 10, we're looking to get into it. We have a pilot that we're running on Windows 10 devices. We're making sure all the app partners and everything, it works. But peer-to-peer is big. Peer-to-peer is, you know, we adopted that process on day one or so. We tested on a few machines to allow, you know, every machine on the network to start talking to each other. You know, so it's like, hey, it's kind of sort of like a site server on each VLAN. You know, so your machine is basically acting like, hey, you know what, let me get the job from you. Let me not get it from the cloud or get it from the nearest site server.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Thanks, Michael. That's a great intro to what you guys are doing. So, Chris, we'll kick it over to you next, and maybe give us again a little bit of background about yourself, your environment, what some of the solutions you're using, and then some of your upgrade would be great.
Hey, I'm Chris Marshall. I'm the manager of vulnerability management for the Wendys company. We've maintained tens of thousands of endpoints at thousands of locations. We took our we have two ITMS environments. We took our 7.5 environment up to 8.1. Sort of to your point, we ended up opting for an Offbox migration, so we took the database and moved it over to some separate hardware. And that went extremely smoothly. It was, I had one user actually notice something, and she was the former manager of ITMS, so she would have noticed that. I would encourage anyone who has the opportunity to do one of these EAPs to do it. Tomas and his crew come out, they come to your environment, they get to know what you're doing. In our case, we identified some challenges to the scalability of CEM, which is something we leverage heavily. And in a matter of hours, we went from identifying the problem to identifying a proposed solution to implementing it. And back at the farm, the rest of my team just sort of noticed, hey, what are you guys doing? All of a sudden, things are working a little better. It went well for us. I would encourage people to take advantage of that. We leverage patch extremely heavily. We leverage CEM extremely heavily. As far as the things that we're most sort of excited about, the most things that we're hoping to get out of ITMS 8.1, peer-to-peer is huge for us. You know, to your point, the idea of having site servers at multiple locations can be a challenge. And you know, back in the 7.1 days, we were trying to do that, and it didn't work particularly well for us. And so now to be able to have that functionality, that's a big deal for us. That's a big bandwidth savings. And then the other one, scalability. I'm going to actually be able to offer some hardware back to the server team to repurpose that into other things. So that's an advantage. I can take multiple endpoints and manage them through a single console rather than needing to worry about hierarchy, replication, things like that. So that's a win, I think. So.
Fantastic, absolutely. Now is it fair to say, Chris, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But you guys manage the corporate environment, also your retail environment from the centralized console, correct?
Yeah. So we handle corporate and restaurant-facing operations.
Okay.
And so a lot of those endpoints in the restaurant. You know, restaurants are becoming more and more complex. By the way, everyone go buy a Frosty after this. So that's my plug. You know,
just tell me you know Chris.
Yeah, drop my name. It'll be good. the restaurants are getting even more complex. We're trying to do some really exciting things in the restaurants, and that means we need more management, and ITMS is one of the tools that helps us do that.
Okay.
And then above restaurant, the things that we're doing, being able to manage that, it would be challenging if we didn't have ITMS in place.
You bet. Now, would it be fair to say, just kind of picking on the retail side for a minute here, and I endorse that. Go get a Frosty; they are delicious. But if you think about your retail side, I mean that is your business, right? I mean that is where you take the credit card, sell the hamburgers. I know you do more than that, right? But all these kind of things, I would imagine you've got to have a pretty high level of trust that not only is the software going to work, but it's going to be patched and things of that nature. Would you agree with that? And anything specific that you might highlight on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is unique. It's imagine having thousands of those high profile servers that no one wants you to touch. We've by using ITMS, we've been able to come up with a patch and deployment testing process. We partner with a lot of other teams within the business to make sure that we get things out quickly, effectively, and safely. At the end of the day, whatever we do can't stop us from selling hamburgers customers to delighting the customers, and anything we do negatively is not okay. And so by using the right process, the right people, the right tools, we've been able to achieve that.
Fantastic.
I can add something to that.
Please.
Like speaking about patching, we adopted to patch monthly, and the product it's so robust where we can just set it, enable it, CEM, peer-to-peer, every month. It's working seamless, so we don't have to worry about, okay, let's test. Of course, we go through the testing process, QA, pilot, those things, but it's a monthly process and it works, as a schedule every month.
Fantastic. That's great. It's good to be able to set it and forget it, right?
Set it and forget it. Set it.
Not have to worry about it. So we always like to hear about features that are like that. It sounds like patch and CEM are both features that you feel like are definitely there. So great. So David, I'll kick it over to you for a few minutes here, sir, and maybe again introduce yourself, a little bit about what you guys are doing, your environment, some of the things on version 8.1, et cetera, as well.
Great, thank you. My name is David Hines. I'm the Senior Systems Engineer for Travelport. I focus specifically on the corporate side. We have roughly 8,000 devices worldwide that I manage. We employ the full client management suite as well as the server management suite. We do use CEM as well. We were very, very early on with CEM coming into our environment. We've been waiting, we were waiting for a while for that piece, so it's been extremely solid since it came out with a 7.5. We've been on Alteris, ITMS, the whole piece for many, many, many years. The only, apart from these guys here, we actually did an in-place upgrade, and we've been doing that since 7.5 all the way through the iterations, and we've been doing it all on box just because we've not had any issues with that process whatsoever. So it's actually been working very well. We're very happy with it, and we've never really had any kind of fears with moving forward with that. And even through to the end agents, we go ahead and after our testing, we go through and push that out to the rest of the community. Really don't even hear anything from our folks saying, hey, what's going on? The SMA itself just seems to go fine. We really haven't had any issues with that whatsoever. We do rely on the patching piece as well. That's very, very big. We have about 25 different patching policies based upon the business needs. So some servers, such as the SQL side and a cluster, they may need to actually be launched manually and reboot automatically. Others, for certain individuals, they may want it installed and they'll reboot when they're ready to reboot. And we do have reporting that goes and shows, as one of the stock reports will show server or endpoints that are waiting on a reboot. And we also employ workflow very heavily. We have roughly 250 workflows in our environment right now. And as part of this upgrade that we did, we upgraded our infrastructure to 8.1. So a lot of the components that were on 7.5 have been working fine in the 8.1 environment, and we've moved over about 10 workflows or so. So we really haven't ran into any major issues with that at this point.
Okay, great. Couple quick questions that spring to mind. I talk to a lot of customers that have done in-place migrations over the years, and one of the things that comes up sometimes is, should we at some point abandon our current install and do an off-box migration? Just wondering if you have feedback on that. I mean, you've obviously done enough of these to realize the value of doing the in-place migration. Would you ever see a point where, and this could be for any of the other guys too, would you ever see a point where you might want to do an off-box migration, or do you see any remnants or things of that nature that you might want to look for that would cause you to think that direction?
As far as the in-place, I'm very happy with it. We did have a legacy file system scan that was from a previous version. Identified that pretty quickly, turned that off. But as far as the remaining pieces, I have no fears or worries as far as going from on-box. The only time that I would probably consider it is if, from an IT perspective, that we wanted to go through and just start completely over with everything, such as our software resources, the patches that are still floating around out there that are superseded. That kind of thing.
If someone handed you the keys to the new servers, you may, or something like that, right?
Yeah, redoing policies, for let's say servers that are no longer around. That's probably the only reason why I would do an off-box.
Okay, Chris?
I think the only reason why we ended up opting for off-box was not for any lack of faith in the process. It really had to do more with finding, coordinating all of those maintenance windows and everything. It really was a lot easier for us to say, we're going to move this database over to a new environment. And this was something actually that Tomas kind of highlighted. We were able to move the database over and just migrate the endpoints so that they showed up on the new environment, and that way things just kept humming along. We really didn't have to do a whole lot. We opened our change controls. We had to notify some customers of the tool. But the end user community didn't feel anything. They didn't notice anything, and that's really the only reason why off-box. That's the only use case that I can think of for off-box. I think if you have a sort of clean environment where it's not particularly complex, then go ahead and do the in place.
Perfect. That's great feedback. One more question for you, David, is I know you are also, I believe, looking at Mac and managing Macs in your environment. In fact, I believe you've made a recent acquisition that would want you to look at that. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe what your thoughts are around the Macs and some of the advantages of 8.1 in that regard?
Yeah, so we just acquired a company that is strictly a Mac shop, primarily for mobile development. So they don't have the option really to move away from Mac. In our current environment, we don't have any sort of software resources or anything for deployment for Macs. And with 8.1, we're definitely looking at the profiling side of that and being able to explore the options with that to bring them more into our environment, providing more of a, I guess you'd say, like a single pane for management and reporting purposes. Okay. So we really need to focus on that. It's not really been a corporate focus from the Mac side, just because we try to have a Windows environment. However, Mac is working its way in, and we just need to account for that.
Okay. And it sounds like that's kind of the case with everybody that's up here on the panel as well, which is, okay, very interesting. So guys, I'm going to ask one more question. I'll let you guys kind of answer this in turn, maybe coming back down the pipe here, David, is, for all the folks that are listening and all the folks in the room that maybe haven't upgraded to version 8.1 yet, right, and want to do that or looking at some of the new features out there, what advice would you give them? What advice around something to do or something not to do? What if you could look back on your old self, what advice would you give to do?
Yeah, the big piece is just look through the implementation guides. The other piece is look at your agent health. Make sure an agent that's not healthy is not going to upgrade. So I would definitely make sure your environment is about as current as you can be, that there's no communication issues or even like sub-agents that are still waiting to be updated or are having issues. So check out the reporting that's already in place to look at the health of the agent. That would probably be my two big pieces right there.
Excellent. Chris?
I would encourage you to hop in to every server, check the agent or check the logs, the event logs. Make sure that if you see red, that's not a good thing. Open tickets, get those solved. And then also, I don't like to print out a lot of documents. The planning and implementation guide, go ahead, print it out, read it, know it, try and relate it to your environment, and make sure that you're hitting all of the boxes, checking all the boxes on that document, and that'll make it go a lot smoother.
Awesome. Just to highlight that real quick, it is one of those documents where, when you first open it, it can be a little daunting because there's a lot of information in there. But if read and read properly and followed properly, I've heard not only Chris, but also David mentioned, I'm sure that Michael would agree as well. But it really truly is, I think, probably the best guided document you can find to be able to, if you want a happy path to get to the next version of the product or to implement it, it's the best way to do it. Michael.
I have to agree with the others. It's, the documentation's there, checklists. You know your environment. My only thing is it's just knowing what's there, right? So if it is any maintenance windows, if it is something executing that you created a long time ago, and just go back and just look over the system and see what it is. 9 times out of 10 it's going to run smoothly, but you may have some hiccups. But definitely have a checklist, an internal checklist on top of Symantec's guide. So that's what we did. We had our own checklist. What do we want to see? What do we need to accomplish versus the steps with Symantec?
Okay, excellent. Guys, hey, round of applause for the folks up here on the stage. Great job. It's not easy to be the first to go, right? It's also not easy to get up and talk about that and be the first to do that. So I sincerely appreciate it. We sincerely appreciate it as well. Don't go anywhere, though, because we got some questions that I think are coming your way. So hang with us here for a few minutes here. So Andy, I know on the Bright Talk forum we've been having some questions come in. So we're going to actually go live to Andy and get some questions, and let's ask those of the group. So for this one's for David. Did you upgrade from 7.5 to 8.1? I think you answered this, but we'll double cover this. Or did you go to 8.0 first and then go directly to 8.1?
Yeah, so we actually did the 7.5 to 8.0 last December, I believe. And that was a triple jump that I had to do with that. Speaking to staying up on the versioning, that was not our case. I did have to do a triple jump there. And even with something like that, there were no issues. So we went from 8.0 hotfix 4 to the latest 8.0 version, and then so we had to do a double jump, and then we went to 8.1 again without any issues to the end users.
Okay, fantastic. Let's see. Next question, and I'm just going to open this up for whoever wants it. Right. So this will be a wild card question. Does anyone on the panel use SEP? And if so, how are you using SEP and ITMS together?
I can answer that.
All right.
So we definitely utilize SEP. With this virus that came out, it was a definite cry to enable that, make sure everyone has the latest definitions, and with ITMS. One of the cool features is the compliance one, that the integration now with SEP and the agent, it lets you know if your agent is compliant. I don't know if anyone that's on 8.1, you can see that in the agent health settings and look at compliance. So we do utilize that with the reporting to compare the two different databases, and so just to make sure, hey, this client is up to date. And I definitely like that feature.
Okay. All right, great. Next question, we'll just jump right into it, is, again, very topical. What do you do to prepare against attacks like WannaCry? If that's for anybody.
Yeah, I think as far as our piece goes, we try to ensure that we're caught up on all of our patching. So we definitely rely on patches with the WannaCry specifically, since that was, I believe, March. That patch, that round of patching had been available for general release to our organization for 50 days. So as long as, I think I mentioned it earlier, as long as your agent is healthy, then the patching will go. You just need to make sure, with our various patching policies, most of our desktop machines are in every day as needed at 2 a.m. all the other sides of that are kind of server related to the business needs. But yeah, I would say to prepare for that, the big piece is just for us would be patching, making sure it's caught up.
So it sounds like pay attention, be vigilant, right, and continue to patch, for any machines out in your environment.
Yeah, we mentioned the set it and forget it, and that's definitely a good a way to go with making sure that they are rolling out. But from the reporting side, just to make sure, because you want to make sure that you don't have machines that have it installed, but they're waiting on a reboot, because that's not going to be of much value. So there's already the stock reports out there to identify systems that are waiting on reboots. So yeah, definitely stay up on your compliancy percentage level.
Okay, great.
Go ahead,
Monthly, I adopt it monthly, so you definitely want to stay on top of it. It's a workstation, it could be vulnerable, but when it comes down to it, I know in my environment, the first look, they're looking at me, hey, are those machines patched? What are we doing if security comes over? And have that cycle in-house, and utilize your notification server. It will notify you, and if you set those rules up or just querying to let you know, hey, this is not patched, this one's pending a reboot, you can actually have the system notify you.
Great, fantastic. Chris?
Yeah, these tools, all the tools we're talking about today, they're only as good as the people in the process you have staffing them.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that I really appreciate is that I've got a team that I really trust. I've got processes that have been tested well. I have a degree of faith and comfort that goes along with that. And if you have hesitation, it's the tool isn't necessarily the problem. The tool works.
Yeah.
If you come up with a solid process and you have people that you trust, you can achieve a lot of things, including being well positioned when events like this happen.
It's great feedback. I love it. Great. Well, thanks, guys. Hey, let's give another quick round of applause for the gentleman on the stage. So, guys, in closing, we'll talk about here what do we do next, right? There's a website you guys can see. And by the way, these links will all be available in the Bright Talk forum as well, in the Bright Talk channel, right? So visit go.symantec.com/ITMS8, right? That has a plethora of information regarding upgrade, migration, all the documentation, et cetera. It's all there. Download the Windows 10 Best Practices Migration White Paper. That's out there. Sign up for David's GSS webinar. He does a fantastic job. He goes really deep. He's very knowledgeable on the products. I encourage you to do that if you're interested in that. And then also in an hour from now, an hour and probably 4 minutes or so from now, Symantec is running our Internet Security Threat Report webinar. You should also attend. So everybody, and listen closely to this, if you haven't attended this before, because of WannaCry and some of the other vulnerabilities, I'm telling you, you will want to attend this because it's the best way that I have seen to effectively make sure your security strategy and what you're doing, whether your overall security or over just a part of that, matches the threats we're seeing out there in the environment. This is a very exhaustive study that Symantec does every year. And this is the webinar going over the results of that study and talking about some of the measures that you can take to protect yourself from that. So I definitely encourage you to do that. And that will be happening in an hour's time frame. So with that said, guys, I want to thank, again, the panelists on stage. I want to thank all the additional speakers. Thank you, our audience, both here in the room and then also those in the webcast for joining us. And everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much.